Muslims in America face ridiculous persecution, especially anytime there's been a terrorist attack. 2 Hindus were killed in New York because their attackers couldn't tell the difference in their ignorance and hate, and a Sikh temple was shot up for the same reason. After the Boston bombing, even after 12 years of 9/11, a Muslim was attacked for just his religious affiliation. There are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world today, with just as many on average divisions as Christianity. But people who don't understand Islam lump them all into the same boat. A Muslim is more likely to save your life in the US as a doctor than kill you as a terrorist. Your chances of dying from Muslim attacks in the US these days is about the same as death from pulling a TV over on yourself, about 15 per year. The Muslim issue requires understanding, not knee-jerk fear. Imagine if America, Europe, and China went to war, and China beat Europe, and there was a stalemate with America. Sorry, Europe, you get to play China's bitch in this scenario because A, you are more naturally diverse than the US, and B, you are more secular than the US. China decides to split all the nations up along lines that instead of being ethnically conducive, are purposely the most anti-conducive. They've also bombed the crap out of your infrastructure so you can't communicate well, and you go through a generation of little college education. They also fund the most radical versions of Catholicism in France, Switzerland, and a European version of the Westboro Baptist Church in German Polistan to rule different nations because the secular governments are too pro-freedom. Guess what? Christianity would become an extremely crazy and violent religion really quickly. Prior to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, had we had modern transportation, you would have been more likely to be bombed by an Irish Catholic for insulting Jesus than a Muslim for insulting the Prophet Muhammad. Of course, there is so much in history to teach in schools. None of what I've said here is hidden. It's just easy to ignore with all the other stuff there is to teach about history in schools. It's why the Japanese public know almost nothing about the comfort women and other atrocities that they did to the Chinese and Koreans, and they teach a huge chunk of history, and they can't figure out why some of their actions anger their neighbors, and they're oblivious that their government should apologize for anything. Germany is about the only nation to ever have its face forced into its own atrocities, and until other nations better recognize, accept, and understand their own past shortcomings, these issues will still persist. If you set a spark and there is nothing for it to burn, it goes out immediately. Plenty of places and people have reasons to be angry and hold a grudge, and could easily succumb to an ideal that rationalizes their anger in a cathartic view of the world. The Native American ghost dance movement, or even the South's view of the War of Northern Aggression, is a level of resentment and ideology that hasn't gone much of anywhere to cause radicalization. In war-weary Islamic nations we send drones, and the people sending the drones are extremely vague about who they're targeting or killing. John Oliver did a chilling takedown of drone warfare, where people in these regions now fear a sunny day with clear skies because that is when drones fly and you never see them coming. However, imagine any of these groups had a sponsor with unlimited funds and unlimited protection to spread their ideology. That would be like pouring gasoline on a tiny, very isolated fire. That's exactly what happened to fuel radical Islam. Saudi Arabia is the source of the spread of radical Islam and its extremist views of the world, and without that as a source of private princes and sheiks spreading their money to other worldwide extremist groups, Islamic radicalism would dry up quite quickly. The information war of Sharia propaganda would reduce dramatically. They fund websites and madrasas and militant extremists in private donations. This is the true source of radical violent Islam. I would think it would be the best argument toward dumping money into alternative resources and smart grids, making it a national security policy to make oil expensive in comparison to other forms of energy, and radical Islam will probably completely dry up, but that's a ways off. When I made this video before, people claimed I blamed this all on white people and said that Muslims just need to get over it. The South still can't get over it, but they don't have the endless propaganda campaign funding and military funding to cause fanaticism. If the extreme Southern Pride militias or white supremacists were given unlimited military resources, you can bet your ass the South would be embroiled in guerrilla warfare. Finally, I would like to say that after the first year, I did not participate in Draw Muhammad Day again. Not because I disagree with the idea. However, so many people who participate in it don't have any clue or perspectives about the geosocial politics of Islam, and why it is such a special case. I don't want to be lumped in with people who make uninformed generalizations about a group of people that's vast and varied, and only around 0.01% are terrorists. On top of this, the groups like to paint all Muslims as vile, bloodthirsty barbarians. and seeing pictures of tribal areas, it's easy to find pictures to back that up. But tribalist areas are places you will find Christian witch hunters killing kids. Tribalist areas are very backwards in their ways. However, these are not the people who will be watching these videos or people we will be engaging with on the internet. The world is globalizing thanks to the internet. In China, teens have more in common with teens from Western nations than with their grandparents who lived through communist China. Lebanese teens, for the most part, have no interest in learning Arabic for reading the Quran, and instead would prefer to focus on French or English so they can be active on the internet. Teens in multicultural UAE may pay lip service to the Quran, but it's hardly the number one thing for them. Teens in Iran outnumber their parents 3-1 thanks to the Iran-Iraq War, and they absolutely love America and are biding their time until they can find a way to actually get a free and fair election, unlike the crushed Green Revolution. The election of Rouhani was a good start, but it still wasn't fully fair. Time and numbers are on their side, if another war doesn't flare up. All nations involved in the Arab Spring were powered by young secular activists, the majority of whom were Muslim, who wanted serious change, although sadly their parents weren't quite ready for the change and freedom their children craved. But it will come. The majority of Muslims we engage with online are 21st century people with parents and grandparents from the 9th to 19th century. To needlessly offend, insult, or paint them as bloodthirsty barbarians is only to our detriment. These kids are hungry for knowledge, and if the extremists get to them first, well, you can see the detriment Europe is having with so many joining ISIS, leaving their parents suffering at their loss. The spread of secularism is much more important than the spread of not Islam. I will continue to attack and counter the claims of Islam and the Quran without mercy, but to vilify and stereotype the believers, that is something I will not do, because it immediately ensures all dialogue is cut off. I personally have experienced the effects of religion and horrible beliefs they cause. To try and say that Islam is worse than any other religion automatically makes me an apologist for Christianity, something I refuse to do and have spent my YouTube career being against. Both negatively impact the world, and I am against both, and I refuse to take a side. There are plenty of things to attack Islam on, but you have to research it. Attacking Muslims overall and using an uninformed lens on the entire 1.5 billion member religion hurts us as a movement if we fumble into their playing field and look like morons stereotyping. Some of us in the atheist community have been criticized as handling Islam with kid gloves. The difference is we actually know why Islam is so violent, and it is in no way more violent than Christianity. Its nations have had just decades of crap and Western interference built up to cause some serious backlash from uneducated people.